so today my group will present to you about our final group project, which is to propose a digital preservation for digital archive that we have already choose, which is National Cancer Institute. So let's get started. Okay, first thing first, let's see for the introduction. What is the meaning of digital archiving? Digital archiving is a repository of digital material that a company or person desires to keep for a longer period of time. Nowadays, we see that digital archiving is very important to access the information by consumer or also the information agency's member itself. This is because with digital archiving, they can access the information anytime, anywhere, because it is easy access only by through internet. However, when we have the digital archiving, we also need a digital preservation to ensure that all the information that we keep in the organization is stay in a good condition. So what is digital preservation? Digital preservation is an evolving area of research for gallery, libraries, archive, and museum, which is claimed across the globe over the last 2 decades. And it is managed the same records but digitally, and it involves a combination of software and hardware to access the data. It is stated by UNESCO. So, this situation stated that the information agency such as CLAM is very important to have the digital preservations for digital archiving. Okay, now we move to what is actually GLAM. GLAM stands for Gallery, Library, Archive, and Museums. All these 4 information agencies share the same purpose, that is, give the information to the consumer around the world for their research, assignment purpose, or also to add their knowledge for their life. Okay, so why we propose the digital preservations for our National Cancer Institute Digital Archive? Because we see the importance of doing the digital preservations for our records. The first important in doing the preservation is because to preserve from danger. This is when the disasters such as fire, flood, or theft happen, our records in a paper form might be lost or damaged. So, by digitize the records in a digital format, we can still easily access the records in the future because we already have a backup. So this situation shows that digital preservation is very important in our organization. Then the second one is to save storage. This is because when we have a records in a paper form, we don't have enough storage or shelves to keep all the records together. So, by doing the digitizations, we can save the storage because all the records will be stored in the system securely. And the last one is for the easy access. This is because when our records in a digital format, we can store the information in the internet such as websites. So, with this method, it can be accessed faster by people around the world, or also for the information agency member itself. So next is a National Cancer Institute record. So as you can see, there are some of records that we need to do a preservation, such as medical records, pharmacy, nursing, physiotherapy, information technology, Islam affairs, public relations, human resources, financial, and many more. All this information need to keep properly because it is very important because it contains a vital information about the patients and also about the organization itself. So, by keeping all these records properly, it can help our organization to make a proper plan and improvements in the future. Okay, so next we move to the problem statement that why we think that digital preservation issues is very serious in information agency area. It is because we think that our organization should expand the use of digital records for the management of our daily activities within the organization. This is because we think that the information agency itself prefer the digital format of records rather than the paper form. So, it is supported by the fact that stated by institutional repositories in Africa that shows 58% aware of importance in digital archive, while the rest did not consider about it. Okay, this shows that the almost half of the respondents aware of the importance in doing the digital archive and digital preservations for their organizations. And why we think that digital preservation is very important, because the organization need to incur huge costs and budgets in the short time if they're still used in a paper form, because they need to purchase a larger amount of shelf and storage to store the records properly. And the effects, if the then the effects why we think that digital preservation need in every organization, because the organization will face problem if there is a threat to records such as flood, fires in particulars, and this information can lead to the difficulties to access the records if they do not have the digital format of records as a backup. Okay, so the objective of this proposal is to suggest digital preservation activities for digital archiving, to develop organizational thinking in managing records in a more creative way, to provide a larger period of time for certain records, to help National Cancer Institute records management become more systematic and efficient, and to provide the ability to access records by users worldwide. Okay, so we move to the next slide, which is standards and policy. Okay, in doing the digital archiving and digital preservation, we need to refer for a proper guideline. So in this case, we choose the guideline from National Archive Guideline, ISO 15489, that is about the records management. And because we need to do the digital preservations for our digital archiving, so we choose the guideline from ISO 13008 that stated about the digital records conversion and migration process. Also, there is a scope or type that need to focus on the records to ensure that records are securely and properly managed in a digital format. So the aspect that should be taken serious is by attribute, access, authenticity, content, records, reliability and usability, file format, and also about the preservation.
Okay, next, we move to the purpose of the digital preservation. The first one is aimed at ensuring the continual accessibility of digital materials. And the second one is protect investment. And the last one is captures potential and transmit opportunities to future generations and our own. Okay, next we move to the roles and responsibilities. The first one is record manager. Okay, what is responsibilities that they do is, the first one is surveying records, defining retention schedules, and creating and operating record centers or all tasks that must be complete. The second one is organize the transition from paper to electronic record keeping system. And the second one is conservator, which is the responsibility is keep detailed conservation records by taking notes on the object's condition as well as any past restoration work. Next is make a visual record of the object for identification and to show its current state. Okay, next is archivist, which is the responsibilities is maintain and manage the whole archive department. And the second one is arrange and organize original and rare papers and manuscript in a neat and orderly manner. Next is IT expert, which is the responsibilities is examine, diagnostics and evaluate system functioning and efficiency. and put in place security measures. For the last position is document reproduction technician, which is the responsibilities is to print and deliver documents to users, adhere to established protocols and distribution lists. Next is to replicate documents and also use a variety of printing equipment.
Organizational operation. The organizational operation is recognized as an effort of the Digital Archive institution in providing high-quality framework design. The framework design that consists in these purposes are scope, operative principle, selection and acquisition, and strategies in handling digital preservation. First, scope. Scope is one of the crucial elements that need to be highlighted in framework design. The person in charge of managing digital archive for National Cancer Institute needs to do a proper plan with the manager of each department so that digital preservation for digital archive can be controlled properly. The example of scope that need to be considered is technology. Today, many organizations use software such as database to store organizational data. If not handled by those with expertise, records may run into problems. Most digital preservation strategies involve staying ahead of deterioration and obsolescence by copying data from older to current generations of file formats and storage media, or by keeping many copies that are tested against one another to find and correct errors. Number 2. Access. The role of digital archive to provide access to users is very important. The purpose of digital archive is to further expand the search for information by users from around the world. Data provided digitally must be easily accessible quickly and accurately to help users obtain information efficiently. Number 3. Law. Existing rights laws are now overly exposed to digital preservation. Therefore, as an information institution, it should always refer to the National Archive as one of the best guidelines. The law is very important to prevent copyright or theft of information by irresponsible people. Without legislation, archival institutions would face problems to perform records management with the need to obtain archiving permission from the rights holders of each content. Number 4. Finance. For a successful digital archive, large-scale expenditure is required to ensure all facilities are complete and perfect. Organizations need to collaborate or send staff to learn skills in developed countries such as Britain, and this also requires a lot of payment. The best financial planning will help the organization have more effective and efficient management. Also, financial plan can also prevent the occurrence of serious issues in the future. Next, proceed with operating principle. In order to establish and implement a high-quality dataset of digital archive, the institution is required to provide a rough overview of activities and frameworks that are included. It is crucial to set an intellectual operating principle since the National Cancer Institute Digital Archive is dedicated to the long-term preservation of related data. Following are the 9 operating principles of Digital Archive Institution will attempt to. For example, number 1, develop a new preservation system that is scalable, dependable, long-lasting, and auditable. Number 2, manage the digital preservation functions, hardware, software, and storage media components that are interchangeable across platforms. Number 3, adopt the Open Archival Information System. Number 4, use open source alternative to make digital archive as accessible as possible. Number 5, ensure the authenticity of the data. Number 6, secure administrative, descriptive, preservation, provenance, rights, and technical information that are all required for the usage of digital assets. Number 7, copyright, intellectual property rights, and or other legal rights relating to the copying, storage, modification, and use of digital information must all be respected. Number 8, included crucial data that establish the data's legitimacy, the integrity, and interpretation in the data description. Last one, provide long-term data gathering, management, and preservation. Next, selection and acquisition. It is required to provide an effective tool in assisting data curators, especially in selection and acquisition of which data is needed to be preserved and to make available to both for use in the future. Selecting the data and resources highly requires those expertise that have a great skill, especially in making decisions of related data and archive should be acquired. The criteria for the selection should consist of the intellectual property rights, estimated value of data, and the storage cost calculated also support mechanisms. At present, the National Council Institute Digital Archive has highlighted the requirements of general criteria that could help in selection practice. For example, the authority of the data that has been created, the scope related across the data available, as well as the level of the material treatment that needed to be identified previously. Now, let's move to the last elements in doing organizational operation, which is the strategies in handling digital preservation. Particularly, execution of digital preservation is to maintain the accessibility of digital materials as long as they are usable and needed into the future. It is important for the National Council Institute Digital Archive to achieve the goals in providing accessibility and continuity of digital preservation. The example of strategies that involve in handling digital preservation are working with producers to develop standards. Number 2, deciding which items should be saved. Number 3, storing the content in a secure location. Number 4, controlling content using structured metadata to assess the whole preservation process. Number 5, keeping data's integrity and identity safe. Number 6, determining the most effective ways of delivering access. And number 7, managing preservation programs to ensure that they meet their objectives.
Equipment, tool and system use. First, operating system. Software that acts as an interface connecting computer hardware and its user. The suggestion is Windows 10 and 11. Second, local area network. Used to transfer data from one computer to another computer. Third, audiovisual. Used to transfer old tapes recording into digital format. Fourth, storage online. To store records through online that can be accessed via network. Fourth, internet. User can access the electronic record anywhere and anytime. Then, microfilm reader. Used to view microfilm that have light sources and magnifications. Microfilm can store documents such as books and engineering drawings. The suggestion is ScanPro 2200+. Next, computer. The function is to key in input, then process the data become output. The data is stored in the storage. The suggestion is iMac. Then hard drive, act as a backup for digital records. Then camera, used for photography object. The suggestion is Hasselblad HD100C. Then scanner. There are three types of scanner, which is flatbed scanner that provide a flat glass area for scanning. The suggestion is Epson Expression 10,000 XL. Second, drum scanner, used for high-end design and publication application producing a high-quality image. The suggestion is Hasselblad FlatStyle X5. And third, overhead scanner, used for specialized scanning, typically involve fragile material or material of archival value that cannot be laid flat. The suggestion is ZULKIFELI 1200 overhead color scanner. Financial plan. Financial plan is the budget that will be used for preservation program of digital archive. It is very important to plan the budget that will be used for preservation program in order to perform activities, process, to maintain and manage records, provide equipment and facility to preserve records from being damaged. First, project-based funding through grants and gifts, which is a common start to digital preservation. It works to apply to start-up costs. However, digital preservation programs require ongoing funding. This is because the organization needs to prepare to upgrade as well as make improvement on regular basis. The key to project-based funding can be assessed through accurate cost projection over several years. Second, organizational commitment. In order to sustain in digital preservation, organization must allocate budget for preservation program of digital archive activities and services. This has become organizational commitment in order to improve preservation program so that the preservation program can be done smoothly without lack of budget that can slow down the process and can cause the records cannot be preserved into digital. Third, collaboration and partnership. The financial plan must ensure the collaboration between other digital repositories, data producer, digital preservation program, standard setting bodies, and commercial organizations that were in the area of digital program. Throughout this collaboration, organizations can improve as well as advance their digital preservation development program. They also can share about the lesson learned with other digital preservation program, expand their expertise in the field of preservation program in order to be able to perform the preservation program well and correctly, and expand information about digital content that available in the organization to the researcher and staff. Lastly, cost of modeling. The cost of modeling include costs for the access of material, long-term creation and maintenance of digital material, production of metadata, supplies, contingency and administration. Second, the cost of maintenance. This cost is very important because the organization sustains the evidential value of the records. It includes the cost of staff, equipment which require large amount of money because the cost for staff and equipment will increase over time. The new and sophisticated equipment require a lot of cost to buy, and the payment of salaries for professional staff also high according to the level of education and skill. The cost calculation for equipment that will be used for the digital archive more than 300,000 ringgit Malaysia. Organizations need to ensure the best security measure to conduct preservation program of digital archive. This is because security measure must be emphasized to ensure the security of records and prevent the loss and theft of information records because the records have value to the organization. Records that selected for long-term preservation through digital archive contain confidential and sensitive information that need to be protected to ensure the information cannot be accessed by non-authorized user. Only authorized user can access those records in order to keep records safe from being lost and so that could endanger the organization. Organization must use information security policy to protect from security breach, which is ISO 27001 that explain the security procedures can be codified and monitored, ISO 2013B, ISO 27002 that provide guidelines on the implementation of ISO 27001 that complain about the security procedure of ISO 2013B. Second, system security. Organization must ensure the suitable and trusted operation must be adopted in order to implement security measures of records. Organization needs to establish the level of security that are needed for the preservation program of digital archive. For example, space, equipment, and store digital objects, as well as determining the need to ensure the adequate security measures to be provided and maintained properly and correctly are an integral part of the infrastructure. Organization also needs to provide special requirements for object classes that have restricted access are categorized as having additional integrity concern. Organization must provide effective system security for preservation program of digital archive in order to maintain the preservation program. For system security, organization must provide two levels of security. First, level 1 is the general policy and procedure level, which establish the organization fundamental approach to maintaining the system and its contents integrity. Meanwhile, for the second level is regarding the specific protocol on the implementation to use appropriate policies and procedures. Third, disaster recovery. The activities or method used to recover important data, supporting system, and digital service after a disaster occurs to digital archive. Organization must prepare disaster recovery plan for future in case there are disaster occur to our digital archive. In order to develop disaster recovery plan, Organization must include the important information. First, providing emergency supplies and arranging services. Second, providing disaster recovery teams. Third, developing disaster recovery and recording rescue procedures. Fourth, contingency planning. Fourth, authenticity. Organization needs to maintain the authenticity of records when transferring to digital records. This is because records are related to the provenance, context, authenticity, and integrity. Electronic records must remain in their original state without alteration after the preservation process is performed. The record must remain in its original state as from the creation of the record. If a record is altered, the record is no longer considered a record because the record lacks of authenticity and integrity. To ensure the authenticity of digital records, organizations need to make assumptions regarding their authenticity at all times. Lastly, resilient storage system that refer to the information technology storage system of storage media that have in the server that can provide built-in resilience to various failure modes using inbuilt redundancy and recovery. However, this system will become obsolete because with the sophistication of new technology can challenge the current system, and materials that are preserved digitally must be transferred regularly to the storage system when this system becomes obsolete. However, digital storage can provide quick access as well as allow for easy periodic resolution and can reduce the cost of physical record keeping. The good storage system can provide good service to organizations in order to preserve digital records for long-term preservation.
The last point for the security measure is the strategies for multi-copy storage. It is using multiple digital storage spanning one or more storage system and storing at least 2 or more copies of the files. Also, it can be considered as use various forms of copies to consider if there is any risk of possible disaster in the archive. The strategy for multi-copy storage is to protect data from any sudden incident that could endanger archival materials such as disaster. Moreover, the distribution of obsolete materials should be avoided. Instead, the archive should use and distribute the copy material as this can help to protect the original archival material. For the next point is challenge. The first challenge of digital preservation is the cost. Before we implement the digital preservation, we need to consider the clear expectation cost for the digital preservation, and we must prioritize the most important first. In addition, it could be the problem in lack of the fund to acquire the suitable equipment. For example, some of the equipment may be quite expensive. Therefore, due to the inadequate equipment in the archive, it may result in preservation process being disrupted. Also, in other perception, the problem of cost providing training for the staff. The archival institution need to release the budget to provide the training program so that their staff can supply their ideas and skills in the digital preservation program. For the second challenge is lack of professional staff. This is due to not all of the staff has the qualification, knowledge, and experience to use and maintain the system. Also, some of the senior staff might not be able to use the modern technology well, and they might be not interested to learn and handling the modern technology. The digital preservation system is requiring the staff to manage the most recent system. Therefore, the staff need to undergo training in advance to handle and maintaining the system. The third challenge is lack of awareness of importance of the preservation. The public perception toward the preservation is mostly underrated by some people, including their staff. In order to establish digital preservation, we need to acquire a lot of skills and services from many parties. So, we need to spread the awareness of importance of preservation so that they can be aware of what is the preservation, what it matters, what it needs, and what you need to do it. Also, we need to explain to them the benefit that we get from the well-managed of information management and the digital preservation. Next, for the progress schedule. The progress schedule that we use to track our progress of digital implementation by week is the Gantt chart. There are a few tasks in the digital preservation program. In the very first week, we receive the client request on the catalog. Then we will send the requested catalog to the client in the second week. After that, we need to wait for the client to make their decision on the preservation program. Next, in the third week, after the client has made their decision, we will receive the order and we prepare for it at the third week. Then, in the fourth or last week, we will start to implement the program of digital preservation. In conclusion, it is very important for every organization to use the digital preservation, as this can help to reduce the problem that are always faced by the organization that preserve material manually. As we know, the manual preservation can be deteriorate easily. Therefore, in order to avoid the deterioration in the archive, the organization needs to transform the physical form of the material into the digital form so that it also will be easier to retrieve, update and maintain the data. The accessibility to the past material is critical for the future planning and the research use. Thus, we can convert the material into the digital in order to extend its use for the future generation. Also, the physical storage space can be reduced when implementing the digital preservation in the archive.